complex environments, control is often misunderstood. The instinct of many leaders when faced with uncertainty is to tighten their grip, issue more instructions, demand more reporting, centralize more decisions. But history and experience suggest something different. The most resilient systems are not those that control everything. They are those that clarify intent, build capability, and trust execution. Today, we explore a leadership doctrine forged in some of the most demanding environments imaginable and ask a simple question. What can modern organizations learn from mission command? Our guest today is Major General Ravi Murugan, retired, Param Vishishta Seva Medal, Ati Vishishta Seva Medal, and my worthy coursemate and squadron type Cheetah from 70th NDA course. Commissioned into 8 guards in his career spanning 37 years, he has commanded a Mechanised Infantry Battalion, an independent Armoured Brigade on the western borders, and a Counter-Insurgency division in Jammu and Kashmir, with operational experience spanning Siachen, the western borders, and the northeast. He was awarded the President's Gold Medal and Sword of Honor at the Indian Military Academy, holds advanced academic qualifications including a master's degree and MPhil, and has also represented India internationally as Defense and Military Attaché in Washington, D.C. He is presently in an advisory role with multiple companies, including Neuralix.ai and Amber Group. He is also an associate editor with Medals and Ribbons, a military magazine. Today, he brings that depth of operational and strategic experience into advisory roles with leading organizations, helping bridge military doctrine and modern leadership practice. Hi Ravi, welcome to Tipsy Talks. This is our maiden show, and I hope and pray that we will, get to host you many more times in the future as well. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the opportunity. I said, great to see you again.
Pleasure's all mine, fellow Cheetah. Ravi, in environments like Siachen or counter-insurgency operations, control cannot depend on constant supervision. So how does this mission command operate in such realities?
Yeah, firstly, again, it's good to see you again, Tipsy. First and foremost, mission style of command is a German term which came up, I think it's called Auftrag-Taktik. That's the word which says mission order tactics or mission style of command. And that is primarily meant for a chaos and the speed of a mobile battle, wherein conditions and situations change so rapidly. Having a centralized directive style of command, as opposed to a mission style of command, you have a directive style of command, which is detailed orders which are given. And in terms of situations of rapid change, this is obviously inadequate. And in places like Siachen and all, where the deployments are far-flung, the communications are tenuous, a lot of responsibility is on those small outposts and those small groupings of men who are now holding that frontier. And the trust is that they would know as to exactly what is the intent and what is their role. And within that overarching rubric, they would then function towards that objective based on what their judgment and situation dictates. So primarily, it comprises of a commander's intent. It gives the subordinate a freedom of action. It is based on mutual trust, and it depends on speed and agility of response, especially in a chaotic surrounding and in a fast changing situation. And this is applicable, I feel, both, whether in military, of course, it's a critical, essential aspect. And of course, even in business today, when the world is the changes are so rapid, what happens today changes overnight to exactly 180 degrees opposite. So that is one thing which I think is very critical even in business opportunities. And for mission command to work optimally, certain conditions would need to be met. And one or two, very broadly speaking, subordinate capability and needs to be developed for that. Leader security, as we go along, we may talk about that also. Trust. And most importantly, there has to be a culture which promotes and facilitates that.
When you were commanding this Armoured Brigade on the western borders, how exactly this, mission type of command manifest in your command?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because the brigade I commanded was an independent brigade. It had a unique role.
Right.
And the unique rule was that it was, inducted and employed at a very critical stage of the battle. And therefore, our role and task was absolutely focused and fixed.
Right.
So, in fact, it was viewed as an instrument of decision at a very critical stage, as and when war would break out and forces would be launching offensives. So, in that situation, it would have been extremely difficult to micromanage. So, as it is, as we, as I said earlier itself, a mobile and a mechanized battlefield, you cannot have directive style of command because situations and because of mobility, the situation changes rapidly. You have to depend on mission style of command. My main responsibility was to train the brigade for that precise role. And to train that brigade for precise role, all I did was gave, like in most, emphasized on the required amount of initiative and independent action by subordinate units within the rubric of the op role of the brigade. I mean, within the overarching guidelines of the op role of the brigade.
Right.
So the role of the brigade and the intent of commander was made clear. And how to achieve that in conjunction with other moving pieces of the brigade was the plan which the commander evolves. That is what I evolved, because there are so many other units under me. So how do they interact with each other, and what do they all need to do is a part of a plan which I evolve.
Right.
But once I given them this overall plan or the broad framework of employment, the role of the subordinate unit is to ensure that its objectives are met in whichever way it deems fit, keeping the North Star as the intent and the role of the brigade. This delegation, decentralization, which is the underpinning of a mission style of command, to my mind, functions under this principle of delegate but monitor.
Right.
So you have to put in place architecture to monitor. It can't be that I have delegated and now it is mission style and everybody does what they are supposed to do and hopefully they will do it right or hopefully it will be successful.
Right.
It doesn't work like that.
Right.
It needs to be monitored. You need to have a system of monitoring.
My next question was regarding your stint at the Army headquarters at the ADGMO, Additional Director General Military Operations, and you had a longest stint there. And you were involved in large-scale capability building at a very high level of the Indian Army, of the nation as such. So, and you would have dealt with the various systems there. So I wanted to ask you, why does over-centralization weaken institution? You just mentioned about, centralization. So what, in your opinion, what damage does it do to the institutions like that?
See, the first and foremost of centralization is the evil. It's not that centralization is all bad.
Bad.
It brings in efficiency, it cuts out duplicacy, it brings in certainty. But it also comes with a lot of disadvantages. The first disadvantage is that you lack information.
Right.
Right. At the feelers which you have in terms of decentralized interfaces, those feelers, that information from those feelers are not reaching you in time for you to be absolutely on the current in terms of decision making inputs.
Right.
But the second thing is the latency to decision making. This leads, one is that information lack is there. Second, there is a processing and a deliberate processing time required. So there is a latency to decision making, which allows opportunities to slip by. And in this, I would like to quote that, the famous OODA loop, Boyd's loop. So if you're able to observe, orient, decide and act in a faster time frame, obviously you get an advantage. Absolutely. So this OODA loop in a centralized command, this OODA loop becomes a little more, takes a little more longer. The latency in this is more, and therefore the time taken in coming to these decision makings is a problem. And this is a problem, especially in civil, because of volatile markets. Right. So your detailed plans fail very quickly, right. And mission command substitutes rigid plans with a clear strategic intent. So what they say, what the directions which you get or the intent which is given is, one, the purpose has to be clear. Okay. Second, the priorities have to be clear. 3, the boundaries are clear. Now you have armed your subordinates with the guide rails to actually execute a mission command style of functioning. So that is, I feel, why centralization may not be the ideal set in most, especially in volatile circumstances and fast-changing environments, because their reactions needs to be very responsive.
Ravi, you mentioned about volatile markets, so let's take it up from here. Do you think in the volatile markets that we are actually countenancing today, the mission style of command, in essence, is the way to manage complexity without losing coherence?
Absolutely. I mean, there is no, see, as I said, there is a terminology which I think the industry uses. It's called, especially in this kind of functioning, they call it a tight loose balance.
Okay.
And the tight aspect in this is what the intent gives, which I said earlier: purpose, priorities, boundaries, all that is a tight set. It tells you exactly as to where these guide rails are. I mean, you have to operate between these guide rails, right?
Okay.
But there is a lot of latitude between this. So coherence is not maintained through micromanagement. Coherence is maintained through common mental models. So, you have trained them through common mental models. So there is a commonality in your framework of functioning. Coherence is maintained through shared success, the metrics of success. You're framed that this is what exactly are the metrics of success in our particular line of business. And therefore, the objectives become clear, that we need to do this to achieve the success which we have laid down earlier. And the third thing which which maintains coherence is an agreed risk tolerance. Ultimately, everything comes with a risk. So there are certain risks which are acceptable. There are certain risks which you feel are unacceptable. And therefore, that is made clear. So once these things are made clear, there's going to be obvious coherence in that. But one thing I would like to say, in volatile markets, when mission command does not automatically work, it breaks down on multiple challenges. The first one is when the intent is vague. The intent is not being made clear. So obviously now you have to interpret it. If a subordinate has to interpret it, it becomes a difficulty and it becomes a function of perception.
Right.
Second is capabilities are uneven. You require trained and capable subordinates. Mission command is not going to work if the subordinate leadership has not been trained, groomed in that manner.
Okay.
Third is giving autonomy without competence is a recipe for chaos. So you have to have competence if you want to enjoy autonomy.
Absolutely.
So, and of course, there have to be incentives which allow you to foster that growth. So you have to, that's why I firmly believe that a differential assessment system is critical to ensure mission command, because unless you reward what you want, that doesn't get repeated.
Okay.
So only that gets repeated which you reward. And you cannot be neutral or ambiguous in it.
All right. Ravi, you commanded in various environments, ranging from high altitude, border, and even counter-insurgency in the J&K. In such places, you would have realized that trust is not optional; it's a mandatory requirement to operate. So, how is trust built so that decentralized decision making does not become indisciplined in such situations?
And that's a good question, because it's all easy to say what we have been speaking about. How do you build an ecosystem which allows that to happen is what is the difficult part.
Right.
So in a simple statement, if I would say that trust is built through a process that builds a trusted product. You need to build the culture which allows the mission style of functioning. So if you want to build trust, you should have the confidence that this person has gone through a grooming or a system. Now, as an end product, he would be able to, with relative integrity, translate my intent into action. So you have faith in that, because that stamp of having gone through this entire process of grooming, and which has proven itself time and again, that has happened. And two, you have seen, you have physically, and you have evidence that this works. And when you have evidence this works, then trust comes automatically, because I've seen this happening in an earlier environment or an earlier situation. And the third thing which is required is, for this trust to be developed, is leaders have to shed insecurities. If a leader has an insecurity, then there is going to be suspicions which creep in. So leaders need to shed insecurities. I still remember in NDA, there was a General Sami Khan, as you would know. He was the commandant. And one day he was having a conference of all these appointments in NDA. And I still remember that clearly today. He says, I'm giving you all a responsibility. And along with responsibility, I need to give you authority. Because giving you responsibility without authority is meaningless. But then he says something. He says, along with authority, there also comes accountability.
Yes.
So all three things are related. That is exactly what trust brings.
Speaking of leaders, Ravi, many corporate leaders today, more so today, speak of empowerment of their subordinates, their employees. But without training and shared intent, empowerment often creates chaos. What do you say to that?
No, my view is that empowerment is good, because otherwise your mission style doesn't work. As I said, exactly what General Sami Khan said, if I'm giving you a responsibility, and if I'm a salesperson in a company and I've been given the responsibility need to grow sales, I need to be given a relative autonomy. See, in today's world, what we require if you go by industry standards, what we require is multidisciplinary teams with end-to-end vision. When you have multidisciplinary teams with end-to-end vision, they can't function without a degree of autonomy. So you have to give autonomy. When you give autonomy, that means you are empowering them. You're empowering them to take action. And when they're empowered to take action, that is when they deliver. So chaos is shed. This is something chaos is shed when you put the guidelines in place. Chaos is shed when you have groomed and trained them. Chaos is shed when they know that you have that trust, because they have demonstrably proven their ability to deliver.
Right.
So there is no question you have to have empowerment, but that person who you are empowering, you have a responsibility as a leader. You have a responsibility as an institution that you need to groom them. Exactly like this. If a CO has been empowered, the army puts him through multiple mandatory courses to train them. The army immerses him in an environment wherein he can soak in that entire the mechanics of how to function, because as you grow in regimental life, you're seeing it on a daily basis. So you're soaked in that environment which sees how this functions. So empowerment is critical. Chaos will come if it has been handed without preparation. So you need to prepare well for that. And, the second thing is you also need to do away with this risk aversion in this. As I said, risk tolerance has to be highlighted, that yes, in your course of your functioning, there are likely to be failures. These are failures which are acts of omission we are absolutely fine with. But these are the failures we are not viewed favorably at all, which could be acts of commission, which could be integrity. I was quite surprised when I was speaking to a huge, one investment firm which is now suddenly come up in the market. When I was speaking to the middle management and higher management, they said one of the issues they wanted me to talk about was integrity.
Okay.
I thought this was a given, right? Okay. We feel that this is a given, integrity should be, but no, they said that is one thing we would want you to talk about is integrity, because we are seeing cracks in that. So you need to empower them rightly. You need to arm them by preparing them.
Excellent. Ravi, there is an institutionalized system of after-action reviews, AAR, as we call it in the services. So how does that, play along in a mission kind of mission style of command? Does it empower it, or does it weaken the authority of the commander?
No, this is a routine in the military, right? We do that without fail. And we do that without fail because obviously it is of great use. The first thing is that it prevents autonomy, the autonomy which you are given to small teams, the autonomy you are given to subordinates, from degrading into drift or loss of trust, because their actions in an after-action review, the actions are evaluated against intent. So how true were those actions based on the overall intent which has been given? So without debrief, intent decays into just personal interpretation, because somebody will say, I interpreted it like that. So you need to have debrief to say, no, you've gone wrong or you've gone astray in that interpretation. And it is now up to the person who's carrying out the debrief to know whether that was deliberate, it's a misunderstanding, it has been lack of capability, because you'll have to take corrective actions. So for that, see, debrief is like, I think Bernard Shaw quoted this, the biggest misconception about communication is the illusion it has taken place. Right? So that is exactly what I would talk. If you don't have a debrief, there is no feedback. And there can be no improvement without feedback. It is as simple as that. So an after action report is a feedback from both sides, from the commander or the person who was tasked and the people who have executed it. So failure becomes a learning. This kind of an after action review also prevents risk aversion. When you say absolutely this is fine, this is a lot of times this happens in combat situations. You fire at the wrong vehicle or you fire at something else. And many times you just look at, okay, did you go through the right identification processes? That is fine. In spite of that, it happened. If you haven't, then we need to correct it. And you correct that. If you need to train them better, you train them better. So without after action reviews, there is no improvement. An after action review or a debrief is how leaders steer without grabbing the steering wheel.
Ravi, it's often said failure in business, damages careers. In defense, on the contrary, it strengthens the systems. So what do you say to that?
I would say I fully agree. I mean, failures, there is a book which I keep reading again and again. It's a great book. It's a Tim Hartford book called Adapt, which says that while failure is the first stepping stone to success, everybody views failure as a learning experience. It is only, as I said, you have to identify what kind of failures are these. Are these failures of commission? There were, I don't know whether a long time ago, we read in one of the software companies, people were fudging, claims and they sacked them right away. So those are failures of character. You can't really excuse that, right? Because, but failure as part of delivering on, as part of the, mission control, that failures are acceptable. In mission control, failure helps in identifying system flaws. It the process corruptions. A lot of times there's a process which is laid down. It gets corrupted over a period of time. You take shortcuts, some steps are missed out. So it identifies those process corruptions. And then training deficits get highlighted. So all these things are a function of failure. So it should be, once those are identified, you strengthen it. So failures actually strengthen systems.
Right.
And the example which I would like to give you actually is of the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union, people forget that in the late 1950s, a lot of economists in the US had the opinion that the communist system was better than the capitalist system. They said that they were going to do far better than us. Because it was not that the Soviet Union was lacking incentives. They had, you performed, they had incentives. It was not that the Soviet Union was lacking qualified people. They had a lot of qualified people. The reason why, it's a view by this author. The reason why the Soviet Union collapsed is twofold. The first one is that they couldn't experiment. See, every problem has multiple solutions. Our intuitive reaction is, which is the best plan? Right? There is no best plan. The best plan is the proven plan.
Right.
You do not know that the plan is proven till the time it happens. So when you are planning for it, you have to have plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D, plan E. If your organization is big enough, plan F also. But what is working or what is not working, you'll only come to know when you try it in small parts.
Right.
So the Soviet Union couldn't experiment like that. The system was not, because the centralized, they followed. Now, this is a great example for the centralized system.
Correct.
They followed a centralized system. They said, this is the plan, you need to execute it. The problem in this was the feedback always said the plan is great. Because the fear of saying that the plan, a centralized plan is bad, really virtually removed objective feedbacks. So the feedback said that, no, this plan is great until that entire system collapsed. Failure strengthens systems as long as the integrity of feedback is maintained.
Right.
As long as the person listening to it and analyzing the feedback is objectively oriented. It isn't punitive.
Ravi, one last question. You had mentioned that there are times in mission style of command that the leader has to step back, right, and let the decentralization, take its flow. So, what internal discipline must a leader develop to resist this kind of a micromanagement?
Good question. See, the most difficult thing for a competent leader is not to step in when he sees things going wrong.
Yeah.
That's the most difficult thing. So if I know it can be done better, you see that even in your own house, your child would be doing something and may not be doing it to the level which you think should be done. You at once
Yeah.
step in to correct and you step
Absolutely.
in to help. So it's extremely difficult. It's a good question because it's extremely difficult for a competent leader to prevent himself from that. And we presume most leaders are competent, and we hope most leaders are competent. But I would say the biggest internal discipline for a leader to step back is being secure in who he is. So if you are secure in who you are and you have a judgment of where to step in and where not to step in, that judgment is very important. You have to step in when you feel that the mistake can be cascading.
Right.
It could have larger consequences, and unless we correct it now, it will lead to for want of a better word, let's say a disaster. Subsequently, then you step in. But if you feel that no, I'm not very sure this could work, it may not work, let it continue, you let it continue. But a lot of times the interference is when a leader wants a spotlight for himself, or a leader wants to step in just to show authority.
Right.
That is the bigger. We see that happening multiple times. To show authority, a leader steps in. So those are motivations which, frankly, do not help the system. So the need to feel important. A lot of times when you delegate, now you want to feel important, so you want to step in and take this back into your control. The need to get credit, that's the other thing. So you do that. So this we need to suppress. One thing which I would like to say is we need to suppress the instinct to equate leadership with action.
Right.
Leadership need not be linked to action every time. So once you separate that out, then you wouldn't have that urge to step in repeatedly to show your leadership acumen.
Understood.
So all you have to do is you need to check alignment with intent, not whether the same way which you have said is being followed. The alignment has to be checked with intent. That's about it.
Right.
So I feel that the main thing for a leader is the internal discipline is one, be competent.
Thank you so much for translating a doctrine which is forged in one of the most demanding environments, from Siachen to the Western borders, into leadership principles that apply, all across, far beyond the military. Thank you for being on the show. We are really happy to have you here, and we look forward to have you number of times on this show again in the future. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much for having me. Really, I liked the interaction, and I also look forward to more diverse and varied subjects for discussions. So again, thank you for having me.
Thank you, Ravi. In the end, if I may summarize 3 principles for modern leaders. Number 1, clarity of intent is more powerful than clarity of instructions. Number 2, trust must be trained and tested, not assumed. And number 3, control the purpose, but decentralize the execution. Mission command is not about reducing authority. It is about placing authority where it works best. For our viewers, ask yourself, do your teams act with intent, or do they wait for instructions? Jai Hind.